Welcome to Merkaba Chakras, where we talk Buddhism in the fifth dimension.
Welcome to another podcast episode of Merkaba Chakras. I'm your host, Vaughn Galt, and today we explore the ancient wellness practice of energy medicine found in Qigong and Tai Chi with author Dr. Roger Jahnke of The Healer Within. So with that, Dr. Roger Jahnke, welcome to Merkaba Chakras.
Thank you, Vaughn, so much. I'm really glad to be here.
Awesome. I'm super happy. I love a lot of different areas of Qigong and Tai Chi, and I do it myself when I get the chance to. But before we go into the interview, you have a ritual to kind of set good intentions and blessings for the mood.
Yeah, thank you. And to those who are listening, just think of this. I'm going to ring this gong and think of it as a portal or a place of entry from where you were to where we will gather together to have this, what I'm imagining will be an amazing conversation. So maybe a deep breath, lengthen your spine, head on top, drop your shoulders, and one time for the gong. Thank you for that opportunity. Yes, and back to you, Vaughn.
Yeah, I love that. I love a good gong. Okay, so you have, Dr. Jahnke, you've been doing this for a very, very long time. But before we kind of get into the nitty-gritty, please tell us, how did you even get into teaching Qigong and Tai Chi?
Yeah, so there's a very, very short story. I'll make it like medium short. And that is that when I was a younger person, my dad died, and I decided that I wanted to be a doctor. When I went to medical school, I was surprised to find that doctors were very proud of the fact that they didn't know anything about health. They were really interested in diseases, diagnosing diseases, and treating diseases. And the only reason I was there was to learn about how to help people to stay so well that they didn't need a doctor. And so I dropped out of medical school. I burned my draft card. This was like 1967. I ingested quite a few plants to breathe in or chew up, and discovered something called the Tao Te Ching. Tao Te Ching is a great little tiny manuscript or text from China 2,500 years ago. And in that text, there were words that just charmed me. And I said to myself, actually I said out loud to myself, I want to be a doctor of this. So then I studied Chinese medicine. Chinese medicine is really awesome. I had a 35-year clinical practice, acupuncture, herbal medicine, hands-on manipulation, Chinese physical therapy. And what I found was that people think of doctors as fixers, and I was thinking of myself as an educator. And people were just not like responding to the educational aspect of what I was doing, which I felt was the most important thing that I was doing. So I quit and started teaching Tai Chi and Qigong. And what I found was that while there was a small percentage of my patients who were interested in self-care, there was a large percentage of my students in Qigong and Tai Chi who were interested in self-care. And I'll just mention that my first yoga class was 1963. My first Tai Chi class was 1971, and my first Qigong class was 1973. when I was studying Chinese medicine in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I've been to China 10 times because I wanted to really get it. Like, well, what are these people trying to say? And Qigong and Tai Chi, they are not exercises. They are like a paradigm in which a body, mind, and spirit practice is a foundational feature.
Mm-hmm.
Back to you.
Well, I love that, and the thing, because I'm in the West. I'm was born in Laos and raised in Seattle, the Seattle suburbs, Washington area, and I just thought that incorporating energy medicine or energy practices like Qigong and Tai Chi and other different arts of Asia for internal. I just thought that that was a normal thing, that everybody does that. And I thought it was normal. I didn't think anything of it, that it's normal not to be on any kind of medication or have any surgeries. And unless, of course, you break your leg, then you obviously need leg surgery. But for the most part, um, I'm 43 years old, and I have my children and I and my husband, we take absolutely no medication. I've never taken medication for any kind of illnesses growing up. And that, I find as I got older, that is unusual and not normal. Most people, especially in the West, take a serious medication for a variety of different things. And having a regimen of energy, medicine, chiropractic, acupuncture, those kind of things as part of your everyday normal activity is not very normal, especially growing up. So why, before we kind of get into the difference between Tai Chi and Qigong, and kind of give people a little more insight into those different modalities, why is there such a contrast between lifestyle? For some people, this is normal. For others, it's fill up the medication cabinet as much as possible and get me on those lists of surgeries. What's the difference between the two, and why do certain people gravitate to one versus another?
Well, I don't even like to have to say these things, but the society that has, shall we say, emerged in America and in most European countries since probably the latter part of the 1800s has been a socioeconomic system founded on disempowering people and getting them addicted to convenience. And the worst part is to convince people that they don't know enough, that it's impossible to know enough. So you have to hire somebody to be sure that your life goes okay. And if we go to, like, for instance, when I was studying Chinese medicine in Hawaii, the local Hawaiian tradition had everything to do with self-care, and the people who were from China that were living in Hawaii had everything to do with healthcare, self-care. My grandmother, I lived in a place called Cincinnati, Ohio. My grandmother was everything to do about self-care. She gave me herbs when I was a child and so forth. If you look into the literature of Germany, Austria, England, France, all those countries had peasant and farming traditions that were based on basically ancient shamanic type. For in Europe, it's the Celts and the what do we call a wizard in that part of the world? Druids. the Druidic, when I was in college and I was hanging around with a bunch of Native Americans, they would never use anything that had to do with. I actually knew a Native American medicine person who said that for him, he was on a program with the U.S. government because he was a Native person, and they were supporting him in being the high priest for his community, and they would give him drugs, and he would flush the drugs down the toilet, and so truth is,
but were the drugs for him or were the drugs for his community?
the drugs were for him. They thought he was, I don't know, like he had asthma or something like that, And so I personally feel that this is really all based on the socioeconomics of convincing people that they don't know enough, and the greed of the industrial complexes. So in this case, what we're talking about is the medical industrial complex, the pharmaceutical industrial complex. We're also talking about the agricultural industrial complex, which is selling people all of these wrong ideas about nourishment, and the educational industrial complex. As an American, honestly, I am embarrassed about this society, because what we know is that the human system produces medicine every day. How did we stay healthy for as long as we did?
Mm-hmm.
And how did we get convinced that we don't need to take care of ourselves?
Right. And I find that very fascinating, that that there's this mindset that you just kind of carry on with life, and just if something happens, then you just go and get a Band-Aid or a pill or a surgery, and then just carry on. And there's no thought to, I should get enough sleep, or this activity is not good for my joints that are not as strong. Maybe I should wean back and find a different activity. Some of that more self-aware consciousness that is working with your mind and your body and your soul essence, and kind of taking cues from your body, going, if your body's telling you this really hurts, not to push it, then to wean back and take those subtle cues, so that you're communicating with your body on a spiritual level. That is not a very common practice, and I hope that maybe we can enlighten some people about this common practice of connecting that mind, body, and spirit together.
Well, I'm glad you're mentioning
all the
that,
time,
because the foundation of Chinese medicine, there are two things to mention here. The foundation of Chinese medicine is, the first rule in Chinese medicine is, as a doctor, I promise to address this person from a spiritual point of view. That's my first promise. Now, in Western medicine, the first promise is, first, do no harm. And of course, we're glad that doctors have agreed to not do harm, but then we have to ask the question, why are we even talking about harm here? Because healthcare doesn't have anything to do with doctors doing something that might or might not be harmful. Turning on the medicine within has to do with, like you said, rest, hydration, nutrition, relationships, exercise, exposure to nature. These are all things that we can do for free. So the big problem is that if persons are staying well by doing a bunch of stuff that they can do for free, then there's a whole bunch of people who want to drive a big car who won't get one. And we live in a society that is based on extracting resources from average people and pouring them into the bank accounts of greedy people. I hate that. Now, second thing about Chinese medicine, besides this beautiful idea of, first, I'm going to honor the spirit. And by the way, the second rule in Chinese medicine is teach people while they're well to keep them well. So then the other topic is what is in the Chinese medicine tradition. It's called three treasures. Three treasures. And all of the ancient societies are aware of the three treasures. They may call them something different, and you named them a moment ago. That's the physiological self that has a material feeling to it. There's the mental emotional self. We can call it the mind if you want to, but it's also the heart and the emotional, mental emotional aspect of ourself. And then there's the transcendental presence, that spiritual aspect of ourself, which is never not there, but is almost always neglected for reasons that, you know, we're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. And what I always say is before you go under the knife or before taking a huge series of medications, try looking for naturopathic alternative methods and look into energy healing, look into vitamins, look at other options. I actually have a best friend that she went and saw. She had a thyroid issue, and she went and saw her doctor, and they said, "Oh, we need to cut it out and do some surgery." And I said, "Well, what's the side effects?" You're going to be on medication for pretty much the rest of your life, and there's some side effects of the medication. You might lose your voice or most of your vocal. And I said, well, what's the benefit of all of this? This is for thyroid. And I said, go get a second opinion. And she went and got a second opinion. They both said the same thing. And so then I said, go get a third opinion from a naturopath. And she went to two different naturopaths, and they basically said, well, let's look at your diet and let's look at your lifestyle. She changed her diet. She was deficient in a couple of specific vitamins that she wasn't taking. B12 was one of them, and a couple other ones. And she changed her diet and cut out certain foods that were causing the thyroid issue. And within less than a month, the thyroid went down, the issue went down. 2 months later, she went back for the follow-up for the surgery, and the doctor's like, "Oh, I don't see it in here. It's completely gone. It shrunk." And she said, "It's a miracle." And then my girlfriend's like, "Really? You wanted to cut me open and get me into surgery as soon as possible, and then hook me up with medication that is going to have side effects for the rest of my life, and I will barely talk." I'm so glad I went and got second and third opinion from a naturopathic doctor instead. And so then I can at least look at all my options. And at least before surgery and severe medication, at least give yourself the opportunity to try a less evasive path and see if that works out first before doing one that you can't undo. And I've had many friends who have tried energy healing, tried naturopathic, tried a lot of these other things that we're talking about, and it's worked for them and they've healed completely, and they've avoided the more expensive hospital route. And I've also had friends who decided not to do that because it required a little bit of self-work and application, and they didn't want to do that because I had to change their lifestyle, so they got the surgery and they're on the medication, and it's not the funnest ride, but that's what they chose as well. So so each decision has its consequences and its benefits, and as always, it's best to entertain multiple options and try the less evasive ones first. But the user has to apply themselves. So let's talk about the users. So swimming and walking are gentle exercises for people trying to stay healthy. And I know you said that Tai Chi and Qigong is not an exercise; it's a modality for the body and the spirit to stay healthy. But what's the difference between Qigong and Tai Chi? Can you explain that?
Yes, of course. But before we do, I just want to say one thing about what to do first and what to do last. In the history of Western conventional medicine, they say that taking care of yourself or doing something with your diet is kind of like the last resort, that is just like so shameful. I can't even believe it. And so I want to be sure that everybody understands the first resort is to just turn to your life, and if you have to get a coach, get a coach. If you have to get an acupuncturist, get an acupuncturist. If you need a psychotherapist, if you're so freaked out about being a better steward of your own life and somehow can't figure out how to do that, well, hire a psychotherapist to support you. Or lately, they're suggesting that the best way to change your mind is to, if I may say, to ingest some plant medicine and, do a review of who the heck you are in the first place. Okay, so
yeah, that's very, very sound advice to seek some consultation for mental health and for mental well-being. Like, you don't have to have mental health problems to get basically a life coach or a stress relieving curriculum to enroll in, because that will reduce the stress level, the diabetes. A lot of this is related to weight management and stress management. Is that
yeah,
correct? Okay.
yes,
Which is all lifestyle.
it's all lifestyle. I mean, you can't take a drug for that stuff. You can only just become more, like you said earlier, self-aware. Having an aspiration and then fulfilling that aspiration by doing what's required to become a more self-aware person. None of that costs any money unless if you've got money to throw around and you feel like you just, can't figure it out on your own, then hire somebody. But wow, you could just go to Google and say the 10 top things to maximize my well-being, and they're going to be like 1,000 pages of the 10 top things that you can do for your well-being. So let's go to Qigong and Tai Chi. But let me first just say that what I'm going to describe now isn't just for Tai Chi and Qigong. It also goes to yoga, and it goes to any other kind of mind-body and, may I say, spirit practice. Practices that integrate the three treasures: the body, the mind, and the spirit. And so they all have the same things in common. And those three, it's another version of three treasures, is body practice, wherein we adjust the posture, which we can do right now, and then do movements. In yoga, it's stretching movements. In Qigong, it's flowing movements, usually done standing. In Tai Chi, it's flowing movements that we do with some stepping. And there are all kinds of other types of mind-body practice that fit into these three treasures of the body practice. Then there's the breath practice, and then there's the mind focusing practice. So that's the three treasures: body, breath, and mind. So think yoga, body, breath, and mind. Think Qigong, body, breath, and mind. Think Tai Chi, body, breath, and mind. So that's how they're all the same. So then let's go to the origins. The origins of Qigong and the origins of yoga are both in prehistory. They come from shamanic time. And in the beginning of language, in both the tribes in Asia above the Himalayas in China and the tribes in Asia below the Himalayas in India and Vietnam and Cambodia, all of those societies, and they were probably communicating quite a bit. People in before cosmopolitan time, before cities and walled cities, there were people who were walking on what later became the Silk Road. Mm-hmm. So people from China during the summer, you can walk right through to India. Mm-hmm. And or from India you can walk right through to China. The valleys, the snow melts in the valleys, and the Silk Road is open. Mm-hmm. And originally the Silk Road was a walking path, and then later it became, with the camels and all that stuff. But the point is that all of these cultures, the Himalayan cultures, the Tibet, and where's the one where everybody's so happy? The national
Nepal.
Yeah, Nepal, and those countries, and India, and then also Vietnam and Cambodia. All of those societies are communicating with each other, and they have a very similar kind of, shall we say, shamanic ritual practices. So in other words, all those cultures have shamans who are kind of like the keepers of the ritual healing. But a shaman isn't just a healer. It's like a star watcher and a predictor and someone who supports rituals of empowerment and all that stuff. So they're all kind of drawing on the same general system of ideals. And so if you go to India, Ayurvedic medicine is based on 5 elements. If you go to China, Chinese medicine is based on 5 elements. If you go to Arabia and even into Greece, they have 4 elements, but they also always have a 5th element, which is called ether, which is pretty much associated with Qi and Prana and so forth. So they all have 5 element systems, really. And so Qigong and yoga arise at the same time before written history. So nobody really knows. And you might say, well, I think the yoga people came up with it first. And other people say, well, I think the Chinese came up with it first. Well, everybody came up with it 100,000 years ago because they were learning how to speak and coordinate their families and gather together in tribes and build fires and celebrate equinoxes and solstices, and learning how to do children learning how to do the dances from the older people. And sometimes the dances are about getting married. Sometimes the dances are about somebody got born. Sometimes the dances are about somebody died. Sometimes the dances are about the change in the seasons. And so these are all the origins of what we now call Qigong and yoga. So they have the same things in common, the 3 treasures, body, breath, and mind. And they have the same origin, which is clouded in prehistory to the extent that we don't know if it's 50,000 years, 100,000 years. The ability for humans to build fires and have meaningful conversations is pretty darn ancient. So why would they wait until 2,000 years ago when they started writing things down? Well, more like 5,000 years ago. Why would they wait until then to invent Qigong? It just doesn't make any sense. And of course, they all had Kung Fu. Every culture ran into some kind of a situation where they wanted to kick some ass and so forth. And so the Qigong and the yoga are always directly associated with some kind of a martial art, because every community needs to have a bunch of young guys who can, go out and meet somebody and say, look, this is our territory. If you come any further, we're going to whip your butt.
There's always the practice of creating respectful boundaries. Okay. Respectful boundaries, and then discernment of which goes both ways.
Yes.
And if you don't respect people's boundaries and practice discernment, then obviously there has to be some kind of defense mechanism. Now, you mentioned Kung Fu and the martial arts, and they have their origins. And, the origins of Qigong, Tai Chi, Kung Fu, all these, they have their origins to the first person that made them public and known, maybe written about it. But that person learned it from somebody else who learned it from somebody else. And so there are teachers of these ancient modalities that maybe are not as published or as widespread known, that teach the modalities, and then it carries on. And then, as history goes, somebody picks it up, publicizes, does the PR on it, and now it's traced back to that's the first person that taught it, but really somebody taught them and they picked it up in different ways.
Exactly.
And it goes back to our ancient unknown history of humanity, because all of humanity, no matter how far you go back in time or in the culture, they all go back to mysticism and shamanism in some way, that connection to that unknown spirit, source, God, whatever you want to call it, intermingling and working with us. And the chi prana is different words for the Holy Spirit, or that spirit of, of the universe kind of going through and flowing through things. So let me ask you this. Most of the movements mimic nature and animal movements. Okay, so what are the most popular movements that have the most profound energetics that you found, like the most popular ones?
Yes, so allow me first to just finish on the other one, which is we got Qigong and yoga, so let's put Tai Chi in there. Like, when was Tai Chi invented? And it's really interesting because Tai Chi is the word in the Chinese language that means when the energy of the heavens and the energies of the earth merge in a tree or a person. And this image back here, can you see that that's what they call that's called the Tai Chi 2. Tai Chi 2 means a map of Tai Chi, and a map of Tai Chi is how substances and energies converge and become people and weather and flowers and vegetables and all the things that there are in the world. And when you said a moment ago that Qi and Prana are everywhere, I really like that, because when you asked the Chinese, what is this Qi thing, there's a lot of opinions, of course, but the foundational opinion is that it is a ubiquitous energetic presence that is absolutely everywhere, not only in the space-time world that we experience, but also on the other side of black holes and through wormholes or whatever all that is. So we're really talking about what in modern physics terms might be called like dark matter, or and there's a lot of just debate about that. We don't know too much about it, but what is interesting is that contemporary science has demonstrated that there's something in the universe that is everywhere, and that there's more of it than there is of matter, and it's very likely that it's Qi and Prana and so forth. So Tai Chi is a concept. And so it's kind of like a cosmological concept. So then at what point was there an exercise or a martial art called Tai Chi? And the answer to that is actually around 1500. So in other words, Tai Chi is nowhere near as ancient as Qigong or yoga. Now the difference between the two, yoga, Qigong and Tai Chi, is pretty interesting, and I'll just say it very briefly. And that is that Qigong has a soothing influence on the autonomic nervous system, which triggers the function of the parasympathetic system, which is basically the entire vagal nerve. And so when the vagal nerve is tonified, it means that you're actually turning on something that is the opposite of the adrenaline-based system, or the cortisol system, or the stress system. So the vagal system is more like what we would call the healing system, the recovery system, the renewal system, and the cortisol system is the get it done, defend myself, make my case, sell something, drive across town, all the stuff, all the hard exercise, all that stuff comes from the adrenal side. And what we want to do is we want to, as a way to be able to develop a philosophical framework for how to tolerate the world that we're in, we need to be able to calm down and be more self-aware, as you said earlier. If we become more self-aware and calm down, all the things that cause diabetes and heart disease are not going to cause diabetes, heart disease, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease, all that stuff. So Qigong is a soothing the nervous system and awakening naturally occurring internal healing mechanisms system. Tai Chi, on the other hand, because it's more complex. So Qigong does what I just said because it's fairly easy, and we can get into the easy and why it's easy if we want to. Tai Chi is more complex. Why? Because in Tai Chi, instead of sitting and standing and using your arms and your breath, you're also walking. And in Tai Chi, instead of both hands doing the same thing at the same time, each hand is doing something different at the same time. So you're managing these two limbs and your two lower limbs. So that's a highly complex process. And so what that does is it maximizes brain plasticity. So Qigong, calm down, healing. Tai Chi, maximizing brain plasticity. And the last thing that we want to do is lose brain plasticity, because after all, that's how we remember where everything is and who everybody is.
Yeah. So really quick about the healing benefits of Tai Chi and Qigong, just some quick little takeaways. So if somebody is suffering from nerve damage or neuropathy or anything nerve kind of related, you suggest them take maybe a introductory Qigong class at maybe the rec center or the YMCA or wherever they can find it. Or if they don't have that in their area, there's free resources on your website,
Yes.
as well as you can get videos. But there's so many different materials out there. But Qigong is great for people with nerve issues, right? Okay.
Qigong is good for people with chronic diseases or who are at risk for chronic diseases, which isn't just nerve issues. When I say that it soothes the autonomic nervous system, that doesn't mean that it's just for nerve-oriented challenges. It's for every kind of functional challenge that leads to heart disease, diabetes, Parkinson's disease, any kind of arthritis, just any of the very common diseases that people are taking these medicines for that they don't need to be taking.
So let me ask you this. So if somebody is currently taking these series of medications and they want to wean themselves off of it because they don't like the side effects, for example, and do you recommend that they introduce this energy practice of Qigong, and then as the benefits, as their body starts self-healing and they start noticing an increase in health, then they can slowly wean off of those medications and then eventually cut off at some point?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that because of the fact that we shouldn't be saying that. What we should say is that there's a possibility that can happen. And so the last thing that people would want to do is cut back on their medicine until they're clear on the fact that it's okay to do so. And if they have a doctor that tells them that they should always take their medicine, they might want to find another doctor. So that go to a new doctor and say, I've been taking this medication, I'd like to get off of it, would you help me? And then, keep finding new doctors until you find one that says yes. But in the meantime, practice Qigong, because what Qigong does is that it basically produces healing resources in the body. It's the medicine within. I wrote a book called The Healer Within, and it's basically all about using Qigong to turn on the medicine within. And one of the things that we say is the most profound medicine is produced within the human body for free. Wow, how powerful is that?
So I can just see people going, okay, so like the Qigong and Tai Chi, it's just a series of movements that you do with your body. How is that producing self-healing in your body?
Because you link, the easiest way to say it is that you link the movement to the breath. So think of it this way. If I'm an average person breathes somewhere around 16 to 20 breaths per minute. And while we're having this conversation, Everybody can just go to their phone, go to the clock, push the button that starts the timer, and then just count how many times you breathe in 1 minute, and it's going to be somewhere. Well, now you're thinking I should probably slow it down, so you're probably going to be a little less. But average person driving a car, answering texts and so forth, that's going to be 16 to 20, 22 breaths a minute. That is not a health-inducing breath pace. So what we do in the practice is that we take a long, slow, deep breath. That's a long, slow, deep breath. So if we make an acronym out of that, it's kind of fun to say, LSD breathing. Long, slow, deep breathing. So let's
like babies breathe.
like babies breathe.
Just imagine breathing like a baby.
Think of it like just take a deeper breath. And I'm going to do it by raising and lowering my hands. So when I'm breathing in, I'm going to raise my hands, and then when I'm breathing out, I'm going to lower my hands. So I'm breathing in, and now I'm breathing out. So now imagine I'm going to do a Tai Chi gesture with that breathing. And the gesture is that I lower my hand, bring it across the front of my body, raise it, and then pass it in front of my face. Now, if I was doing that at the pace of 16 breaths a minute, it would be something like, and that would not have any kind of an effect on my autonomic nervous system. But if I do the deep, long, slow, deep breath, it's, let's do it this way. We're going to breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. And the pace of that breath is maybe like 5 breaths a minute or 6 breaths a minute. Research demonstrates that if you lower the pace of the breath, it automatically causes a deepening of the breath because the body needs a certain amount of oxygen. So if you link slow breathing to gestures that are slow gestures, then we're impacting, having that influence on the parasympathetic nervous system, which then produces all of these amazing neurotransmitters like oxytocin, which makes us feel secure, and serotonin, which makes us calm down, and endorphin, which actually cause us to feel less pain. So that's how it works.
I love it. And the Tai Chi is the modality for brain-related, like if you're having brain-related issues. So would somebody who has maybe depression, suicide tendencies, mental health issues, schizophrenia, would you recommend that they take on Tai Chi and kind of roll that into their practice? Would that help with those symptoms?
Well, it would, but here's how I would, I can tell that you're trying to find like, well, how do people get in and then how do they progress?
Right.
My experience is this, is that the entry place is Qigong because it's easy, and people who are under stress and people who are taking medications and people who are depressed or anxious or experiencing the negative effects of trauma, so all of those. For a person who has never done this kind of thing before, the entry point is Qigong, and then you migrate, once you've kind of gotten to the point where you feel a little better and the mind, the brain is a little more clear, then it's easier to learn Tai Chi. If you are radically well, you're super powered up, and you're not experiencing the negative effects of stress, then you might just jump right into Tai Chi because the mind is clear, the body has the coordination capacity to coordinate the 4 limbs. So it's really, do you want something easy or do you want something a little more complex? Because most people who are going to benefit from this are not that well. They're taking some drugs that they'd like to not be taking. Their mind is probably not that clear. They're shall we say, not feeling that positive about the effects of the drugs that they're taking, but they're taking them because they didn't know any better, but now they do. And so Tai Chi, I personally learned Tai Chi first because in 1967 I left Cincinnati and went to San Francisco. They called it the Summer of Love, by the way. It was really interesting. But I learned Tai Chi in 1967, and I didn't really find out about the other kinds of Qi cultivation practices that we call Qigong until later in the 70s.
Well, a lot of people work in small spaces, in offices, or they just have hectic schedules, and they don't have the time to devote, an hour to working out, or even to add this to their workout. Let's say they have some kind of workout schedule, but they want to incorporate this into their everyday as well. Can you show us a couple of quick, simple movements that people could do in small spaces or an office throughout the day?
Yeah, and we'll do this. We'll do it so that we stay seated, not because you have to, but because you can. And so let's just do what we were doing a moment ago. And so we're going to pace the breath slow and raise the hands and lower the hands. And we'll do that maybe like 3 or 4 times. And I'm just going to be really quiet while this is happening so that people can turn their attention inward and notice what they're feeling. Breath number 2. Now, a question that some people might have is, well, is this exercise vigorous enough to have a positive effect? Breath 3. And the answer is, to get the healing effect, you don't need to go hard. You need to go slow. Breath 4. Now turn your palms forward and lower them to about here. Now take one hand and go down and then cross to the front. Now both hands are on one side. The bottom hand rises and the top hand comes down. Now both hands pass the body and you turn your body. Bottom hand up, top hand down. Both hands pass the body. Now the breath, breathe in, top hand down, bottom hand up, breathe in. Hands passing, exhale. Breathe in. Exhale, hands passing. This movement is called hands passing like clouds. So imagine you're looking at clouds and notice exhaling. Notice that the clouds are not in the sky. They're right here in front of us.
This kind of reminds me of kind of dance movements in Laos and Thailand, Southeast Asia.
Yeah, you got to do the fingers, right?
You gotta do the fingers.
Okay, now we're going to go on to the next thing. Done with hands like clouds, now cross your hands in front. Uncross, turn palms forward, thrust your hands towards the earth and start a long, slow, deep breath. Raise hands up. Bring your hands towards your body. Exhale now, and hands past the body as if you're sending chi, prana, quantum energy, universal healing resources, God's love, whatever you want to say to yourself about what you're bathing yourself in. Do it again. Hands thrusting towards the earth. In Chinese medicine, that's called yin. Gathering the yin, long, slow, deep inhalation. When you get to the up here, you're gathering from the sky. That's called the yang. So we're gathering yin and yang, and now bathe yourself. Exhale. Long, slow, deep exhalation. Bathe yourself in healing chi, energy, life force. One more time. Inhale. Gather from the earth, the yin. Gather from the middle. That's where the living things are. Gathering from the biofield. Gathering from the sky, the boundless sky. Heaven. Bathe yourself. Get a feeling like I am bathing myself in healing resources that have no cost. And of course, what's really happening is that you're calming down so much that the body's now making medicine because of the fact that we're not distracted. Now bring your hands to your face and hold your hands about between 1 inch and 2 inches from your face. So like 1 inch, 2 inches, inch, 2 inches, inch, 2 inches, going in and out, but also making circles around your eyes. Then bring your hands around by your ears. See if you feel some kind of, I don't know, like chi coming from your hands onto your ears, or coming from your ears onto your hands. Bring your hands back to your cheeks. Then let's go down, and I'm going to name, and you can take a deep breath in and exhale slowly anytime you want to. I'm going to name, as we're sending the chi into the body, as we pass, I'll name the brain, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, all the tissues of my face and my skull, my neck, spine of my neck, my cervical spine, my thyroid gland, the vertebra of my thoracic spine, and my heart, and my lungs, and my thymus gland. And now I'm crossing the diaphragm and sending chi to the liver, the gallbladder, the spleen, the pancreas, the stomach, the kidneys in the back, the adrenal glands, large and small intestine, and also my bladder and my reproductive organs. Now place my hands, one hand over the other, onto my belly button. Make circles. I'm going to make circles around my belly button both ways. So like 3 circles one way. Long, slow, deep breaths, LSD breathing. That's 3 circles one way. Now I'm going to go 3 circles the other way. Why 3? You could do 7, you could do 9, you could do 12. Then stop and place the palm of your hand and the other palm of your hand onto your belly button. Lengthen your spine, lift your head up, drop your shoulders. 3 deep breaths, slow, deep, quiet. one more deep breath. And now we're going to conclude by open our eyes and bring our palms together. Think of it this way. I put my past in one hand. I put my future into the other hand. I bring my hands together as a commitment to the present. In other words, the past is gone. The future is gone. I am presencing and then put your hands in your lap. Presencing means I'm not thinking about what I think I should be doing. I'm not thinking about what anybody else has ever done or I have ever done. I'm not thinking about what's going to happen in the future, not even the next minute. I'm just presencing. When we're in the present, there's nothing that can come in to distress the autonomic nervous system or the chi, and so the system automatically goes into self-healing, and that self-healing will last even after I stop doing the practice. Now notice that the practice that we just did was about 5 minutes, maybe 7. And so check this out. Any place that anybody ever works, by international law, requires that you have a break. So when you take this break at your work, it's not like you're breaking the law or you're not being productive. You're only just making yourself more productive, more well, so that when your boss comes to the door and says, well, what are you doing? You say, I am increasing my productivity for you. So get your nose out of here because I need to do this and then I'm going to go back to work for you. Okay, back to you.
I love that. And for the people who are listening on the audio, click any of the video links to watch us do that practice so you can follow along with the movement and practice it yourself. Now, here's the thing that I noticed when doing Qigong or even doing that simple desk practice for the moment that we have it. This is my thought. Meditation, and they have proven this in meditation and mindfulness research. Meditation is anything that gets the monkey brain from thinking, the no thought. Okay, so you get to the point where, and the brain cannot think 2 thoughts at the same time. Try it. You cannot think 2 thoughts at the same time. The brain can only serve 1 thought at a time, 1 master at a time. So if you are thinking about what you're doing at work and then you're thinking about dinner, you stop thinking about what you're doing at work, you start thinking about what you're having for dinner. That's how you can't think 2 things at the same time. Now we know that in Buddhism that if you turn your thoughts back to what you're thinking, it completely wipes your brain from any thought. You get that no thought feeling. And that no thought feeling, if you hold on to it, that is the meditative state. Now, in those movements that we did, just like if I was painting or I was creating music or doing art or dancing or anything else, in those movements, when you're doing those simple techniques, I had no thought. I wasn't thinking about anything. Like, I was watching you, but I wasn't thinking follow this mood and look at that and this and that. There was absolutely no thought. So in essence, it's like a meditation for your body, because literally you're not thinking about anything when you're slowing down and focusing on your breath, you're focusing on movements. You're literally, it's just like when anybody is painting or drawing, they're not thinking about anything. They're just kind of going, Circle, 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 yellow color, now blue color, blue color. They're not thinking about any musings throughout the day. That is another form of meditation. And the thing about meditation, research, because even good sleep can be meditation, is as long as you get into that no thought. That no thought is when you connect to that chi prana life force, that God essence, if some people call that, that source of all that's in each and every single one of it is in that no thought kind of blank energy. And the thing with meditation research is they found in energy healing research that when you get to that kind of no thought blank energy, your brain waves change to gamma brain waves. They found this in meditation research. For energy healing modalities that get to that no thought phase, your brain changes to gamma brain waves. And then something miraculously happens to your body that they found in science. It is that when your brain gets to that gamma brainwave frequency through meditation or any kind of meditation practice or energy healing practice, what happens is healing begins to happen in the body. Healing begins to happen in the brain whenever we hit that gamma brain wave, high delta gamma meditative frequency. And then the other thing they found out in research is when we were doing this to get the past and the present of the hands and put it together and kind of have a moment of gratitude and grace and blessing, whatever names we want to put into that. That is, and just taking a moment of gratitude. They have found in meditation and mindfulness research that when you are in a moment of gratitude and making gratitude, your brain changes its frequency back to gamma, the healing frequency that's connected to that chi prana God consciousness in everything and everyone.
Yep.
So that's the philosophy, you guys. And doing that, when you sit there and you do those simple movements that Dr. Jahnke just showed us to do, you recognize you're not thinking of anything. And you are connecting to that chi life force and having that energy frequency. Now, here's another thing I want to ask you. When we're in these meditative gamma brainwave healing frequencies and connected to prana, chi, the Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call it, what they do in Hindu and also Buddhist practice as well for manifestation is to focus on the end results. Like they kind of insert an end result image of what they want to focus on. Not that they're going to get well or that they're going to start, none of the we're going to get there but just to focus on we're already well. Like imagine you're already well. Do you do that with any of your students to insert the image that they're already well and just imagine they're already well and you're already happy because
Sure.
that will manifest?
Yeah, allow me to just share about that. So one of the things that's really, really interesting about this is that when I was a little kid, my grandmother was associated with, she was a Catholic, but she went to this meeting on Wednesdays and it was called the Universal Brotherhood of the Cosmic Age. And so she actually introduced this idea of no matter how sick you are, and even if you die, there's a part of yourself that's already well. And some people can navigate or by destiny find their way to that wellness instead of dying. And other people find their way to that inherent eternal wellness by leaving this life and reconnecting with the aspect of themselves which is eternally well. So was one of the reasons why I got so turned on by Chinese medicine, because Chinese medicine is based on Taoism. And Taoism is based on shamanic spirituality, basically. And there's a phrase that over the years I've kind of put this together from different sources, and it goes like this. There's an aspect of myself which is irrevocably well, cannot get sick, and does not die. And so that's a kind of that foundational concept in Qigong, because we can take refuge in the idea that no matter how I feel, there's an aspect of myself which is a place that I can take refuge, where that wellness is. Maybe I will or maybe I won't live forever in this body. Maybe I will or maybe I won't get cured from this disease. Maybe I will or I won't relieve the pains that I have in my life, emotionally and physically. But what I definitely know is that I can take refuge in that aspect of myself which is irrevocably well. And when we do this, that's basically what we're doing, because the well self, the irrevocably well self, is a place wherein no influence from the past and no influence from the future. There's only the influence of the fleeting present moment. And as long as we're not like jumping out of our chairs and running for a bomb shelter or trying to get out of the way of someone who's doing harm to other people, we are in a place where we're safe enough. That's why people can do this in their office, because we're safe. And we probably have permission from our supervisor to take care of ourselves. And if we don't have permission from our supervisor to take care of ourselves, we should ask that permission so that we can produce at a higher level for the boss. And so write this phrase down. There is an aspect of myself which is irrevocably well, cannot get sick, and does not die.
I love that. And you know the great thing about what you know, in speaking of about the present, that's why it's a gift. The present, it's a present.
Exactly.
The current moment is present because it's a gift. Now, the thing about the current moment of whatever moment you're existing in and self-aware in, as a present, as a gift from the Holy Spirit, God, Source, whatever we want to call it, is that at any moment when you finally decide to be conscious and self-aware and have and live that lifestyle of that mind, body, spirit connection, and basically living the lifestyle of incorporating some kind of energy healing like Qigong or Tai Chi or yoga or any kind of energy healing into your lifestyle and your everyday, and having those movements, not just to get into it, but then you start internalizing it and doing it almost all the time. You don't breathe that quickly all the time. You take deep breaths almost. It becomes your new everyday, so you don't have to try it. It's your natural state. But guess what? Then your natural state is high delta, high gamma brainwaves, high energy healing. And you don't only, especially we say this in Buddhism, and they have proven this in mindfulness research, that when people are in those high meditative gamma brainwave states, they not only have this energy of healing in their body, but it also affects the people around them. It affects the people that they're around. It affects the environment, the trees, the earth, all of the creatures around them. And so they become kind of an aura field of healing because they're constantly in a natural meditative gamma brainwave mind heart connected to source energy.
Yes.
So now you are walking. Guess what you guys are when you become that, and that becomes your new resonance. You become a walking, living prayer. Okay, you're living your life like a prayer every single moment, because that's what you are. You're just constantly connected and aware. Now, I wanted to say something also, because you mentioned about the present, the past, and the future. In Buddhism, and these are in the philosophies as well. That we think we're doing these simple things, and we don't think anything's profound about it. But I just explained to you that you guys basically are not only healing yourself, but you're bringing in a higher consciousness, a higher frequency to yourself and to reality, thus healing and raising the frequency of everybody else and the environment around you. Um, but also, when you decide at any moment to start living like this and incorporating this into your everyday, your present changes the past in time space, not just the future, but it also changes the past. And according to the philosophy, and in Buddhism and other Eastern medicine, the past, the present, the future, they all exist simultaneously. They're not separated from one another. We can't separate our consciousness. We just focus presently right now because that's what our focus is on. But when we do these higher energy practices and we heal and raise the frequency of our present body and energy, it also heals our past. And so the injuries and illnesses that you may be experiencing and healing right now all of a sudden heals at an accelerated pace. Or sometimes they will completely change because guess what? You've just healed the damage that was done in the past. So can you speak to kind of the metaphysical aspect of healing?
Sure. Well, you basically just said it very well. And I know that the average person gets it, that if I make a change in my present, that I'm going to have an influence on the potential for me to be a more well person or a more productive person or to live more comfortably into my future. That all just kind of makes natural sense.
Mm-hmm.
But then when we say that this actually has an influence on our past, it raises a question mark for the average person. I understand it because I think about it all the time. I write about it in the books that I write, and I teach it to people who I teach, and I teach people to teach these things, so I'm very comfortable with it. I think the easiest way to say this for the modern person, and then we'll say what the easiest way for the ancient tribal person, because the new arising modern person and the ancient tribal person, they share the idea that there is no time.
Mm-hmm.
This is the powerful shamanic mystical secret, is that there is no past and future. There's only just the fleeting present that we're in, and then how that fleeting present is, rolling and transforming and feeling good and feeling bad and, all the stuff that happens. So in physics, there's a lot of research on this whole idea that the past and the present all exist in the same place as the present. The difference is that the future has an unknown for the local person to be able to know anything about, because we're caught in something that we call time, which may or may not exist. And the person who's having that experience is going to question the possibility that anything that I do now has an influence on the past. So the basic concept is that if I can either understand shamanism, or if I understand physics, I don't have to understand both, and they're both kind of big deals to try to understand completely. But when you cook them down to the thing that we're talking about right now, is that the secret, the portal to the marvelous outcomes that we seek, and by the way, those marvelous outcomes may be that we get run over tomorrow. So it's not like you can say, I want $1 million and I plant the seed of that and that's for sure going to happen. Instead, what happens is that we become oriented to the fact that there's a naturally occurring thing going on here. No matter how much we do, which we're allowed to do, and we're allowed to be purposeful, and we're allowed to have a will, and we're allowed to discipline ourselves, and we're allowed to do change my diet, change my exercise. All of that has something to do with all of this too, in more like a space-time sense, but in a transcendental sense, in a shamanic sense, in a quantum sense, in a spiritual sense. The idea that holding an intention, let's just call it that, holding an intention to be as associated as I possibly can with the aspect of myself which is eternally well, is an awareness that will have an influence on whatever the past was. And so that the main thing that says is that, like for instance, when I was very young, I had pneumonia. So what that would mean is that for me, knowing that I'm eternally well in outside of space-time, and knowing that I was sick inside of space-time, so then I bring the outside of space-time idea to bear on space-time, and therefore it has a soothing and nourishing and maybe even healing effect on something that caused health problems in the past and may in fact cause health problems now and may even cause health problems going forward. So the secret, no matter what happens to the future and the past, is presence. Because when I take those long, slow, deep breaths and I disassociate from the complexity of my life and I do a little movement to be able to pump the blood and shall we say turn up the little bit, just a little bit of metabolic functionality. I don't have to run, I don't have to ride a bike, I don't have to lift weight. I can do all those things. I might want to buff up.
Yeah.
But if I want to heal myself, what I'm going to do is maximize function. Basically, that's the underlying idea for most people, is that Qi is function, Prana is function. Yeah, of course, Qi holds the planets in their places around the sun. Qi is what it is that makes for a black hole and a wormhole and the multiverse and all of that. But applied to ourself, Qi is the function of the physical self, the heart-mind, which is the feeling self and the intellectual self, and then the transcendental self, all integrated and coherent. And so you and I can have these fun conversations about how present ideas heal the past. People can have question marks about that and say, well, I'm not sure I understand that. But we can all come back to the idea that presencing and disassociating from the complexity of our life has relevance. And one more thing to say here is, why is it that the bad guys want us to be afraid? And
Goodness, fear is a very high emotion and is also a toxic emotion. To be constantly in fear mode is a toxic emotion that weighs down your immune system. They've already proven this in science. It weighs down your immune system. It slows your healing abilities, your self-regenerating healing abilities. It is a very toxic emotion. So if you're constantly feeding yourself fear wherever you go, constantly, like you turn the TV on and it's one fear after another fear and etc. I'm not saying you shouldn't keep up with what's going on at the news and stuff, but you also should be mindful of how much fear you ingest, and then maybe how can people kind of like reposition fear that they feel in certain news? How can they reposition it so it's not so damaging to themselves?
Well, presencing. So that's what I was saying a moment ago, is why is it that the bad guys want us to be addicted to feeling anger, fear, disliking these people, disliking those people, looking at pictures of ourselves and disliking ourselves? That's how they can sell us all this crap. That's how they sell us the medicine. They make us sick, then they sell us a medicine that doesn't do anything. And it's ridiculous, because if we take refuge in the aspect of ourself which is inherently well, and share that with others, and when we're exposed to bad news, it's kind of like, whatever, for me, I'm in that refuge as securely as I possibly can be for every moment of my day. And when I go to sleep at night, I am intent upon getting good deep sleep. As you probably know, you need about an hour and a half to 2 hours of what they call deep sleep, which also has to do with brain waves and all of that stuff. And when you wake up in the night and you're freaking out about the news that you watched during the day, or even your bank account, you have to be able to find your way into the present, because then you can go back to sleep, then you can heal yourself, and then tomorrow you can do something about your bank account. If you stay awake all night worrying, then tomorrow your brain is fogged up. I'm telling you, this is my view, is that I hate saying it this way, but the greedy elites make us afraid so that we'll get sick and we'll buy expensive medicine that doesn't do anything, and we will continue like that. And as long as we're like that, they're going to have their jet planes, they're going to have their big houses, and we're going to be fighting amongst each other all the time. It is ridiculous. And so I am an advocate, and I think you are too, of living peace. And when we live peace and then we meet somebody else, I mean, what is it that we do when we meet somebody else? We put our hands together and we say, presencing, and I recognize myself in you.
Namaste. Yes. 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 I will say one more thing, just because I don't want some people to get lost. They're like, oh, this is a great, really woo-woo, great metaphysics conversation. But let's, on a practical level, just to understand the power of being in a meditative, conscious, high vibe, gamma brainwaves, heartfelt frequency. And when you start incorporating energy medicine and Qigong into your everyday, maybe you can't do it every day, maybe you do it a couple times a week, maybe you do it for 5 minutes at your office desk, whatever. Start a little and then kind of go from there. But the thing with the present moment is that you can take two people who have the same injury, and they've proven this in science. You can take two people that have the same injury, and one is constantly in fear mode, constantly feed himself negative news, information, constantly going into the melodramas, taking a whole series of medications. And you can also take somebody who's incorporating cutting off the fat of the negative news and the melodramas, everybody else's melodramas, and he's feeding himself happy news, happy information, watching happy shows, doing that self-healing work, and they're incorporating energy medicine like Qigong, like Tai Chi into their life. What you see and what they found in medicine is two of the same types of injuries of the same people who, for the most part, have the same medical records, same demographics. The one who's incorporating naturopathic energy medicine and just kind of lighting up their stress load and fear load, they're healing so much faster, almost on a quantum level, than the other person. And in Buddhism and Eastern philosophy, we would say what is happening is that because you healed the present and you're connected to that force, that life force, or the force is strong with this person. The chi is strong with this person.
The force is with you, my friend.
Yes, the force is with it. This is a strong one here. Anyways, because you are connected to that life force of the universe, of source, God within you, and you are, in that flow of motion, what is happening is your past, the injury in the past is healing, is lessening its severity, and what you see in the present is a much quicker, better healed person. The injury healed faster, the ailment minimized, the tumor went down, it completely disappeared. There's so many of these phenomena. I know you probably have on your website and in your instructors, so many different testimonies of illnesses and injuries of people that reported, and then after they incorporate this, it's completely gone. I mean, can you tell us like 2 or 3 of your top ones that you see often?
Well, I'll tell you the one that really got my attention just last week, which is among the tops. I was doing a 7-week online course, and one of the people came on, raised her hand and said, wanted to say something. And she said, when I came into this course, I was legally blind, and I could hear you, but I could not see you on my computer. And on the 7th week, she said, I'm still legally blind. I probably couldn't get a driver's license or anything like that, but I can see you now. And I'm going to do this practice until I can get my driver's license. And I thought that was one of the most important ones that I've ever heard before. I've had a lot of experiences with people who will say something like, during the class, my head was hurting and I was feeling really sleepy. And then when we did the practice, after the practice, I thought I was going to get a headache. I did not. I felt really lightened up and awake. So what that one points to is that person was, their function was depreciated, and they were feeling the negative effects of that. And after we did the practice, their function had been activated, and therefore they basically healed themselves very quickly.
I love that.
I remember one person, this is a really long ago one, a woman who had chronic lymphocytic leukemia. Lymphocytic leukemia there's two kinds of leukemia. There's this one and that one. She had lymphocytic leukemia. And she would do what she called Qigong, Tai Chi every day. And some things that I taught to her. And so when she was going to her doctor, the doctor would say, you know, most of the people who have this disorder, when they come in here over a period of months, their capacity is depreciating. But for some reason, yours isn't. And so imagine you've got a disease and the doctor thinks you're going to be depreciating, and then you come to the doctor and you demonstrate on a regular basis that you're not depreciating. And then, you know, the doctor says, you know, what are you doing? And then you say, and I've heard this like 1,000 times. I told my doctor I was doing Tai Chi, and they said, oh, okay, well, keep doing it. And it was kind of like they didn't even want to talk about it.
Yeah. You know what? I think the more people who incorporate Qigong, Tai Chi, and even the martial arts and any of the different energy healing practices into their life, the more we show the modern Western medical establishments proof of miracles.
Yes, amen.
Yeah. So do you have a last message for people to help them get over the hurdle?
Yeah, I think that it's kind of unbelievable what we're talking about here. And the reason why it's unbelievable is because of where we live and who we listen to. Because if we were in a Native American tribe, or if we were in a Vietnamese village not that long ago, or even now, the things that we're talking about would make absolute sense. It's like everybody that we would know would be thinking like we're talking here today.
Oh yeah, I'm from the Hmong tribe of Laos, so this is common. This is like a no-brainer.
Yeah, exactly. And so what happens is that we get, again, I'll just say it again, greedy corporations keep us afraid so that we get sick from stress-generated diseases, and then we take medicines that we don't really need. And so isn't that enough of a motivation? I mean, to learn that the most profound medicine is produced within your own body for free, what else do you need? So what I know for sure is that most people are hypnotized, lost, confused, and they don't even have time to listen to what we're saying. And so they will basically depreciate, they'll crash and burn, and you and I, we will have done what we could do to support them. And so I feel free from every person who doesn't get it. I am free. And for every person who does get it, you are my brother, you are my sister. And we can be a part of how the world recovers its sanity by simply doing things that we can do in our own home for no cost. And that's just so compelling.
Yeah, well, you know, Dr. Roger Jahnke, I very much enjoyed this discussion on Qigong and Tai Chi, and there's an introduction into a lot of different other energy healing modalities. The thing that comes to mind for me is that as illnesses, injuries, and diseases get more sophisticated and modern medications and technology aren't able to keep up with them or address them, because there are illnesses that we just do not have a remedy for. We just don't. So as we get into these areas of nature where we do not have any remedy for these advanced evolving diseases and illnesses, or we don't even understand what they are, it is these ancient energy healing practices that are the last resorts that we have available to us. And what is there to lose at that point?
Let's go first resort.
Yeah, make it the first resort before you try the other stuff. So that's my recommendation for sure. So whatever age and whatever gender and wherever you are in your life, the present moment is a gift, and you can always choose to connect to that life force within you and begin that self-healing, that higher consciousness practice. Mm-hmm. So for more information about Dr. Roger Jahnke and his team's offerings, courses, books, please visit their website, which is, it's also in the show description, Institute of Integral Qigong and Tai Chi.org. And thank you kindly for listening to another enlightening conversation. Until next time, blessings.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Merkaba Chakras, where we talk Buddhism in the 5th dimension. For more information about today's guest, please go to the show description. For more information about Vaughn's metaphysical work, please go to merkabachakras.com. The views expressed today are for entertainment purposes and do not necessarily reflect the views of the host or replace any medical or legal advice. Don't forget to subscribe for more interviews about the 5th dimension. Until we meet again, blessings.